Good morning, Myrtle.
Morning.
Thank you for coming on the podcast, The Things We Don't Say. It's a pleasure to have you on. I just wanted you to introduce yourself and let the world know who you are.
Hey, thank you very much, Melissa. I'm happy to be here. I'm Myrtle, as you all know. First and foremost, I am a mother, a single mom of four. My children range from ages to 15 to 20. Yes, I did have four children in 5 years. And yes, I'm going through the thick of it, being the mother of young adults, almost, and teens. It's been a journey. I'm also an artist, as you can probably tell by my background, and I pretty much dabble in everything from weaving to now I'm into like wood carving to painting to writing stories. Whatever it is that feels like it's going to be a great expression, a great mode of expression for me, I use it. And I'm a PhD candidate at York University, where my research focuses on the experiences of Black women K to 12 educators who do equity work.
You also were an educator for 20 plus years. You also are a TA at the university. You also serve in the community. We met doing our masters 4 years ago, and that was a pleasure. So, Myrtle, today I wanted to talk about all things motherhood and grief. And I just wanted to say thank you for being open and willing to come on here and speak with me and having the courage, because I know that it's a topic that not necessarily is exposed for all, and it's a journey that you're still going through and working through. We know grief is not narrow, and so I really do appreciate you coming on here to expose yourself and share with people the journey so they can learn from you, gather wisdom, and help themselves. Because even though you feel that it's still a long way to go, you've come a long way. And some people are at the start of their journey and sometimes feel like they can't get through. And so you're doing all things as a mom with teenagers, as a PhD candidate and a
Yeah.
friend and a daughter and so many roles.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And yeah, it's gonna do something for someone, and that's the most important thing. Can you just take me through your journey on motherhood? Your journey of being a mom. Was it something you always aspired to be? How did it change your life? When you're looking back, reflecting now, in your adult ages, thinking when you started, what was that like for you? And maybe even bringing relation to your own relationship with your mom, things that
Of
you learned
course.
from her, things that you took away, things that weren't there that you put forth in your mothering. What was that journey like for you?
Thank you. That's a really great starting point, and I'm glad that you invited me to start with my mom, because I really believe that my story and all mothers, their story is nested within the story of the mothers and the other mothers, the people who mothered them outside of their mothers. My story with my mom growing up, when I was in Dominica, that's where I'm born, and I see myself really as, I would say, more so a Dominican person than I do a Canadian person, because I never felt that I could really enter into Canadian society and be on the inside as Dion Brand. I think people who come from who immigrated to Canada can relate to this, where when you leave your home and you come to somewhere new, especially as a child, nobody really gives you the background and like what's going to happen to your identity. All of a sudden, your identity becomes an issue, when before you were just a being with other beings and living in a community where you didn't have to ask, who am I, in relation to people, because you were interconnected with everyone around you. That's how I grew up anyway. So when I came to Canada, I felt, and it's interesting that the word it, alien used to be used to describe people who are outside of that country, because that's really how I've continued to feel,
Hmm.
that I didn't see myself in Canadian society. I didn't see myself reflected back to me, whether it was at school. I think church was maybe one of the only spaces. What This is why I think church is, at that time anyway, maybe not so much today, was such an important place for a lot of Caribbean folk, because that's where we saw our reflection. That's where we heard our music, ate our food when we came together and gathered. That's where we heard stories. We saw the way other parents parented similar to how we are being parent. It wasn't like, why is your mom angry? Why is she talking like this? Like everything wasn't questioned. It was like that was one of the few places I would say, or only places where I did not feel like I was such an alien to Canadian society. And I continue to feel that way as a mother. That even became even more pronounced through mothering, because I realized my mothering was very different than those around me who were predominantly outside of that Afro-Caribbean community. And I that led me to again interrogate myself and my identity, and question myself and over explain myself to people about how I parent. So all of these things created this real block for me from being on the inside of Canadian society and being able to identify myself as Canadian. My nationality obviously is Canadian, but culturally I am not. And I've really come to accept that, and I've moved beyond the grief of that, you know, and at the same time recognizing that when I go back home to Dominica, I see myself, but I still see the ways that I have been cut off from that society
I
as
was, I
well.
was about to say
Yeah.
there's parts of your identity that has been stripped now
Yes.
into
Yeah.
the Canadian society. It's like
Yeah.
a double-edged sword, yes.
Yeah. So back to the whole thing of mothering, I think it's important to know that growing up, from 0 to 6 years old, I was, really my memories are of my father. Probably similar to you, I was a daddy's girl. I'm an only child, and my father wanted desperately to have a girl. And of course, he got his dream. So my father was the kind of father that was very hands-on. He was an artist as well, so he did travel outside of Dominica to Martinique, Guadeloupe, and so on. But when he was at home, when he was back in our village, my father and mother didn't live together because my mom was quite young when she became pregnant, and the community in that situation kind of takes over your child, and they kind of all my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, all my grand aunts and uncles took a very active role with me, and my mom kind of was like sort of a secondary figure, which is an interesting thing, because she was young, and my father lived of course, with his mom, and culturally, that's also something that's different. Where here, the minute you kind of grow up, like you're kind of pushed out, which I admit, because I want my kids to be successful in this society, I kind of push them out a little bit because I know it doesn't. This idea of living in a multi-generational home and is not supported here in the same way. So anyway, back to the story with my father. So my father, whenever he was back from traveling and working, he would come and take me, and he had a ritual with me every Sunday. I would get dressed, and we would walk up what we call the lale, which is like the street, and that he would go and visit his friends, and I was like his little jewel that he was just like, like just so proud. And my grandmother, my mom, and their friends would make fun of him because he was so proud. Like it was like, we call it, I think it's puppy show, or I can't remember what the term is, but
Mhm,
when someone's just like awkwardly like boasting.
mhm,
So we had a very tight relationship. My father taught me how to use a knife and fork from the time I was probably 2 years old. He was very insistent on certain things. When he was painting, he'd put me beside him, and he would put a paintbrush in my hand, even though I wasn't really doing anything. Anything he did, even things like going to the washroom, we did together. So everything that he would do in his day, he did with me.
mhm,
And he was a very intimate part of my life. I have memories of my father when I was 2 years old, which most people don't. I know things about him that I remembered from a very young age because we spent so much time together.
mhm,
And then unfortunately, my father got ill, and he passed when I was 6 years old. They knew he was going to pass. He had a time to live. And so what happened was, they were preparing for that. So as a result, they were preparing for my mom to also leave Dominica and come here to Canada. So my father passed in March. I think my mom left a few months later. And then a few months after that, we had the hurricane that devastated our island. I think 80% of the island was devastated, was gone.
mhm,
All the structures and so on. And I think as a child with a very short amount of time, losing my father, losing my mom to another country, I didn't understand. I was like 7 years old at that time. I didn't understand like what it means for your mom to go, or 6 years old, your mom to go to another country. I didn't like we don't have that. And it's not like now where kids know what traveling and what they have this awareness. It's not like that. It's different. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that understanding. I just knew that my dad is not there, my mom's not there, and then our home is not there. Our island is it was a state of emergency. It was a state of shock. And then because of the hurricane, the Canadian government said that if there's anybody, because they knew what happened in Dominica, if there are domestic workers who have children who are orphaned as a result back home, so who lost a parent and there's no parent, then they can temporarily send for them to come, so that until things are settled in the island. Because you have to understand, when a hurricane like that happens, you have all the children were vaccinated, all that there's diseases can spread easily, there's no structures to live in, you have to rebuild everything, that takes time,
Mm-hmm.
school is disrupted, everything that you would, the markets, the roads, there's no way, like especially the village I'm from, there's no way to get to the town, there's no way to drive anywhere, it's like everything stops. So it takes a while for the infrastructure to get to what it was. So I came up here, and it really is a miracle that I was able to stay, because my mom didn't have a home. She didn't have anything. She was a nanny living in someone's home, taking care of their kids. And the people when I came, it was again through the church that my mom met another person from back home who said, I will help you. So she became an other mother. So I lived with this family for about 5 or 7 years, no, 5 years, and that's another complicated mothering story, because I think in the Caribbean you can't tell mothering stories without other mothers.
Mm-hmm.
I think almost every Caribbean mothering situation has another mother,
Mm-hmm.
has an other mother, or has a, it's just how we survived, right? Just thinking about that, all that, as a child growing up with a lot of like, just I was confused. But one of the things I do remember is the woman I lived with and her family. We used to watch the Sound of Music every year, and that became my favorite movie, and
Mm-hmm.
it still is one of my favorite movies.
That's good.
And I laugh because it is the basis of what I understood motherhood to be. So I thought, I'm going to be a mother and I'm going to adopt children and I'm going to have a big family. And this is how my family is going to be. And I'm going to be this kind of mom.
Mm-hmm.
And the other mother that took me in, she was very similar in that way, and very different, but similar. So that's kind of where the early ideas of motherhood came from for me. Motherhood was something that was cut off from me. Motherhood was something that was found in another person for me for some time. Motherhood for me was distant, because if you remember, I said the earliest memory I have of me and my mother is when my father died.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells you, like, I don't have really many memories of my mom before then. So yeah, I don't know if you want me to go further, if you want to pause for
No,
any.
no, no. That's great. Thank you for that. I'm
Mhm.
just thinking, as you got older, thinking about how you felt without your mom, thinking about the grief of your dad, when did you start to come to terms to sort of reckon with those feelings of what transpired with your dad, um, the situation of your mom, having other mothers, though, so still feeling a sense of nurture and care, but it wasn't your mom, your dad wasn't there. What sorts of feelings, thoughts, how did you put it all together?
That's a great question, because that did really have a big impact on me.
Mhm.
So when I lived with this other family, they had three other children, and they were like my other siblings. They were, I grew up with them and lived with them, and we dressed alike. And their mom really treated me very kindly. I cannot say anything other than that about her. I really, she always said she has four children. She's passed now, But she always said that she has four children, and that's part of the legacy that I've taken from her. But when you are a child living in someone else's home and you know that they're not your parents, even though she treated me quite kindly and as if I was one of her children, I never felt that she treated me differently than her children, which is very interesting. Like it's not a common thing. But her husband, I could definitely feel he favored his daughter and he had a very strong bond with her. And I did, it always reminded me that this is not my family. And
Mm-hmm.
I always remember trying everything I could to please them, to please him, to make sure that I was accepted. But I also remember every weekend waiting for my mom to come home because a lot of domestic workers, they would work outside of, they would be like live-in nannies or and so on. But then on the weekends, they would rent apartments or share an apartment with each other where they could have to themselves on the weekend and kind of have that time away. And so my mom would steal away, and that's when I would have that time with her on the weekends. And I just remember like just never wanting her to leave on the Sunday night when she had to go back and just like really wanting her to be close. But then what it really called for me was this idea of I want to have my own family so I can belong. And
Mm-hmm.
that theme has been with me for until I had children. Like that, and that's a kind of, it sounds wonderful, but it's not.
I was just
It
about to
is not.
say, it sounds wonderful, but in that wonderful, there's a lot of pain and
Yeah,
grief and sadness and melancholy.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so I want to belong. Wow, like there's so many different avenues I can go into
Mhm,
speaking about belonging, right? For
mhm,
children, for young girls, for Black women,
mhm.
um, which is very interesting. That's just heavy to hold for a second. I'm just really
Yeah,
taking that in, right? Like
yeah,
yearning for your mom, thinking about your dad, holding that space for yourself, but still developing, having another family. Obviously, I can relate when I think about not having my mom and
mhm,
also wanting a place of belonging and connecting to think of all the people who have poured into me and who have mothered me, but that sense still of yearning, right? And so when you're yearning for love and you know it's not quite home, like you felt that, you could
yeah,
count to say that the family took care of you and they didn't treat you different. There were slight situations with the dad,
mhm,
um, but you still knew your mom, wanted your mom, felt that comfort,
yeah,
and you were like ripped away, then put back, ripped away, then put back. Um, and similar to you, I've always said, oh, I want my own family just to have that family portrait. As we learn along the way, what that family portrait actually means is a different story, and the healing definitely is internal.
yeah.
But thanks for sharing that. I'm
Mhm,
also thinking of when you were back with your mom. At what
mhm,
point were you back with your mom where it was the two of you? And what was the feeling like or the outcome of just being parented by your mom and knowing though what your dad's influence was in your life? Do you feel like there was a difference? Feel fine when you reflect with your own kids? Hopefully we can get into,
mhm.
your family losing your husband. What do you see from that outcome?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much there because the family that I lived with, though I felt like, especially with the mom, that I was just one of their children, I really did feel that way. If she sewed a dress for her daughter, she sewed a dress for me. If she got something for her daughter, she got it for me. There was never like, I would get less or I would get, and she was just very meticulous about that. But one thing my mom has shared with me recently is that the financial burden that this put on, because my mom had to pay them to take care of me. And every year we would go on a trip, like a vacation. We went to Atlantic City, we'd go to Florida, we'd go like, as a little kid, I'm traveling, all around with this family, and my mom can't go because my mom is number one working, and number two has spent all of her money to make sure someone can take care of me. And my mom revealed to me recently that they would sometimes leave bills for her to pay. So they would, at some point my mom moved in with us when she got a better job and so on. That took a few years. but they would leave bills for my mom to pay, and my mom wouldn't anticipate that. So it put her in she was always in this like deficit situation. And my mom also had to support her family back home, which is very common in the Caribbean. So that stress, I did not realize the heaviness that my mom was carrying. I didn't realize, now that I'm looking back on, I'm almost getting emotional. I didn't realize that my mom and I, so to answer your question, when my mother got married, and it was encouraged by this family, but she got married, and that's when we moved out. That's when we got our own place. And I didn't realize how much my mom was bringing into that
Mm,
situation. So
mm.
my mom and I, you know, because that was also when I was 12 years, or yeah, when I was 12 years old, I started junior high. There started to be lots of tension with my mom and I. And now looking back, I understand, because I'm going through a similar thing, that my mom didn't enter motherhood freely. And I might get emotional here,
It's okay.
because I think as Black women, people don't realize that we don't enter into motherhood like just free to be a mother.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like we
I'm
are saddled with so much.
I'm just
Like,
taking in, like, reflecting on um where people come from and what they start with, and having such high expectations with the title of mom, and then comparing yourself to North American society and North American
yes,
people with different starting points and not heavy burdens. And so I'm even thinking about you and thinking about your mom, and I'm thinking about all that hurt and pain and heaviness. It doesn't even have to be hurt and
yeah,
pain per
yeah,
se, but the heaviness, right? It's like people do family planning where it's like a happy, joyous time.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
oh, what do you want now in life after we've got the house and the car? Oh, let's
mhm,
have a family of six. Okay,
yeah,
beautiful. We'll start
yeah,
trying in January. And
yeah,
oh, we have the house set up, the financial set up, the grandparents are looking forward to it. Mom and dad are so happy. It's such a light-hearted, exciting feeling. And then
yeah,
now you're a child and you cannot understand or put context to how you came about and what your mom endured. You just come with the expectations. And then as an adult, you can reflect, be like, wow, like I said mean things or I had certain expectations, and mom was carrying so much to even be mom. Before she was mom,
yeah,
she was said name,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so it's hard.
My mother what was always said that she put me first, and I felt that all my life, even to this day.
Hmm.
And the one thing I want to say though is that my mom, being a Caribbean, raised in the Caribbean culture, was very abusive towards me. I remember most of that time between the age of 12, believe it or not, even when I graduated university in my 20s, like, in the Caribbean, you're always a child. You're always your mother's child. My mother would physically, like, she'd beat me. And my mom carries a lot of guilt about that to this day,
Hmm.
where she said, you didn't do anything outraged. Like, I wasn't a rebellious kid. I was probably just, I was scared. I was not my mom, like, no, I couldn't mess with my mom.
Hmm.
But if I was late to come home, let's say from school, or if I was showed any sort of, like, if I said what, or showed any slightest bit of disrespect, or I'm just trying to think of, like, it wasn't anything. I remember once coming home late because I went to the library, which was right by our house, to get some stuff for an assignment, and I got beaten for that. And I remember, like, just being so scared during those times. But the reason why I'm sharing that is because my mom and I we were close, but when I became a teenager, we became estranged because, and I don't mean we lived separately, I just mean emotionally we became estranged because my mom was so worried. She was always worried about my well being.
Hmm.
She was carrying this weight, and she was by herself.
Hmm.
We didn't have a single family member to lean on, no one.
Hmm.
She was just fearful that I was going to somehow get hurt, or someone was going to take advantage of me, or I was going to get pregnant. That was a big concern because obviously she got pregnant as a teen. She didn't know what sex was when she got pregnant. It was like she was so worried about how what was going to happen to me in
Mhm.
terms of my safety and well-being. My mom didn't ever put pressure on me about you have to be a doctor, lawyer, whatever. She just wanted me to be a good person. She
Mhm.
wanted me to be productive. She wanted me to be happy, but she wanted me to be safe. And that feeling of like, it reminds me of Toni Morrison's book, um, Beloved. I don't know if you're familiar with the main character, Seth, but Seth kills her child because the enslavers are coming. And instead of letting the enslavers take her children, she tries to kill them so that they don't have to suffer ongoing death. And
Mhm.
it's like when my mom was here and going through that, I felt like my mom was beating me in a way to save me from a world she was so afraid that I might get into.
Mhm.
And that's sometimes, as Black mothers and as Black women, especially who are mothering, we sometimes are faced with two deaths for our children,
Mhm.
right? Like, and we're so scared that our children are going to enter into this lifelong death, the social death that they go through in
Mhm.
society,
Mhm.
that we then kill an innocence in
Mhm.
the child so
Mhm.
that we can prepare them. Or if you notice, Caribbean children are very like, we're like, nothing can touch us. Like we, like what? Like, you know what I mean? Like
The
we're
licks
not
that I got when I
structured.
was a young child can never compare to what you
Oh,
can do or what the world can do. I've faced it all.
whatever.
Don't worry. The broom, wooden spoon, the
The
vacuum,
belt for me
the
was a
the
belt.
the cursing, like they've
Yeah,
said everything. They say everything anytime,
yeah,
anywhere. So it's like,
yeah,
what can happen now? And
yeah.
I completely understand that. I'm kind of hearing like the influence of history, right? The
Yeah,
influence
yeah.
of our generational
Mm-hmm,
ancestral history and the history of our parents all
mm-hmm,
equates to the outcome of how they go
yeah,
about us. So it's like
yeah,
you either have the outside world harm you and kill your
yeah,
spirit, or
yeah.
I create a tough spirit, which in part
Mm-hmm,
kills you, but then
mm-hmm,
you can go out there and hold your head strong and strive.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I very much relate to that and I understand
mm-hmm,
that. And that's also a burden, though, that the next gen has to carry, right?
yeah,
It's like you
mm-hmm,
carried a burden, now we
mm-hmm,
carry a burden with more freedom, more resources, more opportunities to allow for healing. And we're taking different routes now, like
mm-hmm,
therapy, that
yeah,
wasn't afforded or it wasn't
yeah.
available
No,
to our
yeah,
parents, right? They didn't even think about what do you mean
mm-hmm,
feelings? They're there in survival mode. Like you feel
yeah,
sad? What do you mean?
yeah,
Like go to school, go get a
yeah.
job. But were there any specific characteristics that you felt as a young woman, a young girl, that you needed from your dad that your mom offered, or the dynamics were different and needed with your
Mm-hmm.
father, or do you feel like it was fine? How do you come to understand
Yeah.
that?
My mother, and I don't know if it's an appropriate term to use, but she was gangster. Like, nobody's going to come near me. Nobody is going to touch me because she's going to kill them, pretty
Mhm.
much, point blank.
Mhm.
Like, there's not even, I'm not even joking.
Mhm.
Like, that's how my mom was like my protector.
Mhm.
And anybody looked at me like any which way, like and she could see, sense, feel that their intentions were bad. She
Mhm.
went straight to the source and was like, don't even think about it.
Mhm.
Like, my mom protected me.
Mhm.
I know my mom was also she is a beautiful woman.
Mhm.
And when she was young, she was beautiful. She had a
Mhm.
lot, she still does to this day have a lot of admirers, you
Mhm.
know. And she was confident in
Mhm.
that. My mom was a overweight, like plump woman. She was plus size, whatever they call it now. It was like it was never a thing for her. She like took my mom would like the way she looked at herself, she took pride. So which meant it attracted a lot of men. But my mom was also like her radar was like up high, like you come near my child, like like she was not playing.
Mhm.
Because I know a lot of times, like they say that one of the most frequent abusers of children is the partner of, usually if it's usually it's a single mom, it's the person's partner. And my mom just had this like awareness, so she provided this protection that I feel sometimes the father kind of takes that role more so, especially with a girl. My
Mm,
mom was that for me. So I never felt like I wasn't protected. Like I remember one time I was at the bus stop, my mom and I were waiting at the bus stop, and there was this girl who was bullying me in the neighborhood.
mm,
And she didn't know that because my mom was, and she's young. She didn't
mm,
know that we're mother and daughter. And we went into the bus stop and she started to threaten me in the bus stop. And my mom was there. And it was like on. My mom's like, go ahead,
mm,
try it.
mhm,
Like go, like my mom did not business. Like, like so I always grew up with this feeling of like somebody's got my back. And
mhm,
that feeling is what I think some girls who I know who are like the daddy's girl, that's what they have from their father. And
mhm,
of course, I didn't get a chance to develop that with my father because he died so young. But
mhm,
the part that the legacy, because I give credit to my mom, she
mhm,
didn't try to be my father. She never, ever, and I'm the same way. She never said that or wanted that or even subscribed to that.
mhm,
What my mom did is she continued the legacy of my father.
mhm,
My father's an artist. My mom knew what my father started within me.
mhm,
The little dollars that my mom had, art lessons, like art things. I was knitting, I was crocheting, I was making bags for friends. I was like any art interest, anything I wanted to do. My
mhm,
mother supported me and would I remember it was back in the day when everything was a big deal. I got this Crayola thing that was like the latest thing where it had all the pencil crayons, all the markers,
mhm. I
all
had
the
that.
everything, right? And it
Mhm.
turned
The
around and
paint.
whatever.
Mhm,
Oh yeah, and it was like a big deal if you had one of those, right? My mom proudly gave that to me. Like
mhm,
all these things, she was continuing the legacy of my father. My mom's not an artist, she's not in the art world, anything but. Sometimes I pay to me, she's like, "What is that?" Like
mhm,
she's not in that world, but she continued that legacy of my dad. What
mhm,
I did miss with my father is this being together that didn't need words.
mhm,
Because my dad and I have had a spiritual connection
mhm,
that I think I have with one of my children as well in that way,
mhm.
where we don't need to say the things. We don't need to, when we're together, it's like, it felt like I didn't need to, I don't know.
You
It's
could
like we just,
just be. You could
yeah,
just be and
we
enjoy.
just, there was this other thing that was happening
Mhm,
right between us. And I never had that with my mom.
mhm.
Yeah.
How did you come to um, build a relationship or accept a relationship or care for a relationship with a male figure? How did
Oh,
that come about for you?
no, it's a messy, messy scene. That topic is like now, if I was this girl back then, there'd be crime scenes. Like, if I often think like all I want to do is take all the things that I know now and put it in the minds of like young women.
Said every woman that exists,
I,
every mother exists. Like if I knew now, if I knew
oh,
what I know now, oh my gosh, Melissa, I promise.
one thing with not having a father and not having uncles, not having brothers or any male figure in your life is that you do not understand. You long for that connection. I see that with even in my children. You long for that connection with as you're going through puberty, as you're going through adolescence. That's a time where you're branching out to with boys and so on. For me, it was boys, so you're like you longing for this connection, but boys that are your age are longing for a different kind of connection, and you're misreading that. And it for me, what it did is it developed this neediness, like I call it like white knuckling, where you're holding on so tight to anything and everything
Mhm,
because you feel like you need that in order to feel somehow like you have value.
mhm,
And that lesson, that journey lasted until I was in my 40s.
mhm,
And that's how, I think it was just after maybe my mid 40s. When I was younger, I mean, I dated as a teenager and I didn't use a lot of agency in dating. I was just like, there even I remember, like, this is going to sound awful. There's this one guy, and I'm sorry if you know who you are, if you ever were, I don't know. But there was this one guy when I was like, I was a teenager, and I remember like I can still smell him. Like
Mm.
that's how bad it is. That I was repulsed by him, and because I was repulsed by him, I can to this day smell him, and I still entertained him. I didn't say I'm not interested. I don't want this. That was something I didn't use as strong. I remember this older guy when I was 17 trying to like get up on me, like trying to be whatever. And I was like terrified, because I was a virgin until I was like in my 20s, like 25 or something like that. I know it's unheard of, but I was raised in the church where you are a virgin until you get married. And that's what I had planned on doing.
So going back to you talking about feeling something with men, not having intentionality on who you're dating, etc. The feeling you got, did it remind you of the feeling you got from your dad?
Mhm.
Like, what was that feeling like having male figures in your life? Um,
Or not having them. Like there were men who
yeah.
were like interested in being like a male figure to me, but my mom was always suspicious of them, rightfully so, because she was like, it's not in our culture, you have to understand, in the Dominican culture that I was raised in and the way my family was, women were with women. It was a woman's world. Like we did things. I have a very strong memory of my grandaunts, my grandmothers, my cousins, my aunts. It's like it was a woman's world, right? Men had their own thing and whatever, but a young girl being with a man, that was not a safe thing. And think about the legacy of slavery and how that connected. So in my family in particular, that was my mom was very, like, she had eyes on that, and she was like watching everyone who were like, oh, she's such a nice girl, because I was a very compliant child. I was a very, what people would call like a good girl, and my mom was very proud of that and really wanted that for me, right? So I I want to connect that back to my father and boys and so on, because I did not have, I think it's more about just not having that male presence to like remind you that you don't need to get validation through a relationship only. Like I just didn't have that. So I was always seeking validation. I didn't see myself as pretty. I didn't see myself as whatever. Like I was well dressed, I was whatever, but I didn't fit that stereotypical like pretty black girl, although people might disagree with me saying that. But so I didn't get a lot of that validation. So I was like a serial dater. So, especially when I got older after my husband passed and I went back in the dating pool and I was really into working out, and I had that body and I
Mm,
had that ass that came into the room before me and after me. That's, I got a lot of attention because of
mm,
that.
mm,
But what I mistook that attention for was a way to validate myself, to
mm,
because that feeling of being desired was so
mm,
strong in me,
mm,
as a way to say like I deserve someone. It was just a strong thing. It led me to be in relationships where I wasn't looking at the person. I was looking at the opportunity to be validated by the person.
And I think that's so important. Like, if I
Yeah.
could go back and have you
Yeah.
say that again, I think that's a big thing for young women and
Hmm.
people in general, humans,
Yeah.
to understand when things are missing within, you try to get validation outside. And that validation outside will maybe even cost you your whole being, your whole self, your whole identity to try to get someone to prove that you're worth it. What?
Yeah.
Like, so, and I relate to that because obviously I've had my own experiences and I've done my
Hmm.
own fair
Yeah.
share of trying to be validated until eventually you come to a point to say, like, enough. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
go there anymore. How do I work within? And
Yeah.
there's so much pain within and so much work that needs to be done to heal. So your perspective shifts and
Hmm.
validation is not a thing. Like, you validate yourself. So thank you for sharing that. That is so important. There's so many nuggets that you've dropped
Hmm.
and that we've discussed where it's like it requires silence. Like, I know we do
Yeah.
the snapping, but it literally just
Yeah.
required us to be silent for 2 minutes to really
Hmm.
sit with that, right? And what
Hmm.
that's done to ourself and what we put forth now as we go on and encounter children. And you have 4 children, like, boggles
Hmm.
my mind to even think how you
Yeah.
even take in all your history and knowledge and then seeing the young people in front of you as they journey too, and how you give them the wisdom and how you navigate the
Mm.
pain, all the history blows my mind out of this world. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the dating because I think that is definitely one way the loss of my father manifested in my life. And as I told you, into my 40s. When I told you that I was, a virgin, whatever that means, until I met my husband. And when I met my husband, and I, you know, this may be triggering to some people, so I'm just putting that out there. Um, a lot of my friends were just shocked. They were like, I don't see you with this person.
Mm,
Like, it wasn't that he was a bad person. They just knew instantly, like, this doesn't go together based on who we know you to be and who we see him as. These
mm,
two things just do not seem to go together. But because he pursued me so heavily for months, and that feeling of being desired was so addictive, like it was, and then that feeling of like somebody wants me and I can belong to somebody was irresistible. I
mm.
could not detach from that.
Did you actually know what you were looking for when you were wanting to be with someone? Or was it that you were just looking, like you said, which you answered, you were
Yeah.
just looking for a sense of belonging? So there's no intentionality, there were no specific set standards to be like, the person that I would like to come together with is
Mm-hmm.
A, B, C, D, E, F. Pursued
Mm-hmm.
you, you felt desirable. It's like an addiction, it's like a drug,
It
and
is a
you just
drug.
took to that, and then
Mm-hmm.
everything else is blindsided and you
Yeah.
don't foresee the person, you see the feeling. And I think
Yeah.
that's something that I really harp on as I've gotten older, to think of a feeling is fleeting, it still matters. I'm not discrediting feeling,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the logic actually matters. And I feel like even we're kind of talking about script, like
Mm-hmm.
church and religion a bit, but I'm saying even in scripture it talks about protecting the heart, for all
Yeah.
things flow out of it.
Yeah.
So a feeling is great,
Mm-hmm.
but the feeling only goes so far. What's the actual logic of what's happening for the outcome? And how many people actually think through that in those depths when you just have this yearning to be desired?
Yeah.
That's it. Everything else, null and void.
Well, definitely. And I think for me it was not even about, I think you kind of touched on this. It's not an awareness of what it is I needed and wanted. I
Mm,
never stopped to really think about what do I want and can I have it? That's something growing up, I never really thought about. I
mm,
never considered that I could say what I wanted and then ask for it. I
mm,
talk about that in my book as well, because it's just like you're given, you're given, you're given, be okay with it, right? So when I met my husband, I was fresh out of university. Fresh, like literally that month I finished
mm,
university. I traveled on my own, and then I came back home, and it was like brand new, right? And I remember when I met him, and he was pursuing me. I remember thinking, I'm not gonna date this guy. Like I knew. And then when we started dating, I said to my friend, I'm not going to date with this guy. I'm going to break up with him in 6 months, because I knew there was something in me that knew. But the desire was like this drug. It was like a dopamine hit, like every time, that I couldn't resist.
mhm,
And what that meant, and this is the point I want to drag home, is I ended up giving up so much of myself. My husband ended up having non-consensual sex with me. That's the first time I ever had sex,
mm,
and it was very blurry. I
mm,
didn't want to,
mm,
right? And this is a conversation I try to have with my kids all the time about consent, that it doesn't have to be in only a certain phrase. It doesn't have to be only at a certain time, and that if somebody is like pulling on their clothes repeatedly, shielding themselves, or doing these things, that is not consent.
mm,
If somebody's saying, I don't want this for my life, this is what I want for my life, that is not consent,
mhm,
right? And consent has been spoken in such specific terms. And this is also connected to Black women, historically. Think about enslavement. People talk about Black women entering into relationships with white men. How do you know that that was completely consensual when
Mm-hmm.
the stakes are set up that she has so much to lose if she doesn't?
Mm-hmm.
How do you define consent in that situation?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something I think this is the first time I've spoken about it publicly. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've told my friends, I think I've spoken to different people. They know that this has happened. But
Mm-hmm.
what that situation did for me was then create compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Because I said to myself, I've done this. I can't marry someone else because I'm no longer a virgin. So I committed and said, I'm going to choose to love this person.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the concessions that women sometimes make. They
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily look like exactly like this,
Mm-hmm.
but how much of what we ask for and what we do is really connected to what we really truly want, what we want freely, what we really desire. How
And I
much of it?
And I feel like women get there at your age. At a
Yeah,
your age, at a certain time,
yeah,
late 40s, 50s, women start to say, I will be no matter what. I will
yeah,
never be held down. I don't
yeah,
care. I'm showing up just as me.
yes,
You come in with a vengeance, but
yes,
I think it's also, again, bringing the
yeah,
history, bringing everything you've endured to
yes,
say, I will never be shut down again. I'm not working on anyone else's terms, times, ways
yes,
of being. Whereas
yeah,
if from a younger age, you had that advocacy over
yeah.
your life, it might be a softer approach. It might be
Mhm.
more receptive to comply with all others. But now it's like, enough, done,
Mhm.
never again. And so I understand that as well, which is interesting.
Yeah,
And so take me through marriage.
yeah.
Take me
Oh,
through marriage.
yeah. So,
In a summary of thinking young people want marriage, Myrtle, I want to be a wife. I want to be married. It's amazing. I want the whole shebang. So not negative only,
yeah,
because there's positives to everything. It's a duality. But just kind of give me the summary of the dreams and aspirations when you were naive
yeah,
and then living through it for the real deal of being a
yeah.
wife.
I think for me, I would say that marriage was a concession that I was making. It wasn't, even on my wedding day, I remember my mom and I driving down to the church together in the car, and I remember crying. And my mom said to me, like, "Oh, like you're crying because you're happy that you're good." And I said, "No, I'm crying because my husband finally has someone."
Mm,
And now that I think back about that, I
mm,
wasn't I knew this wasn't for me.
mm,
And this may be very difficult for people to hear. I don't have animosity or anger towards my husband. Actually,
mm,
very rarely did.
mm,
I It's more like, we were two people entering a situation that we had no business being in because
mm,
we both had healing to do that we didn't do. I say that he had a golden heart.
mm,
Like, he really cared about people. He was very generous with people. He was an amazing friend to people.
mm,
When he was well, when he was healthy, he was an amazing person. It's
mm,
not about that. For me, it's more about looking at myself with the distractions and with the desires that I had, meeting somebody with their own distractions and desires, and that coming together and creating sort of a really difficult situation. So
mm,
when I got married, I was like, okay, I'm gonna set up, because I don't know, it's how I am. I'm gonna set up this family. I became a teacher the same year that I got married. We bought a house, and I'm like, okay, in 5 years we're gonna have our kids. I'm gonna stay home. We're gonna da da da. We had this whole plan. This, even with money, we're not gonna incur debt. We're gonna da da da. Everything was like, we even used to meet monthly, and I have those notes to this day of our monthly meetings, and then we'd have like a yearly meeting to review our goals and whatever. Like, everything was intentional,
mm,
right?
mm,
From that moment on.
mm,
But it's like, when you have my husband suffered from mental health issues, and I
mm,
didn't understand. This was back in the day where nobody talked about, mental health issues. I didn't know, I didn't understand it, and then I was fighting with him against it, not knowing I'm fighting an illness, not this person, and it created so much conflict. We adopted our first child after 5 years, which was a goal. I told him, under no circumstances will I ever not adopt. It's going to happen, which he was perfect. He was happy to go with. We adopted, and then a few months later, I got pregnant with our first biological child, and then a few months after that, we got notice that our first son, that he has a sister who was just born, and would we like to adopt her? We adopted her, so they're 10 months apart. Then a few months after that, I became pregnant. So that's how I had 4 kids in 5 years.
Mhm.
And none of that was necessarily planned except for the first child.
Mhm.
And I think childhood for my husband brought up a lot of his childhood pain. And that's not my story
Mhm.
to tell necessarily, but
Mhm.
there was deep, deep wounding that he was carrying his
Mhm.
whole life,
Mhm.
like deep hurt
Mhm.
and abuse and neglect and
Mhm.
suffering that
Mhm.
from childhood he had been trying to make the best of. And
Mhm.
so when you have children, what do children do? They are exactly what you said about partners. They are mirrors to you. You
Mhm.
see, that's the one thing I noticed the first time I was with my son when we first got him, June 6th, 2006, was when we knew that we were going to be his parents. And I remember looking at him, and I remember parenting him that first little while and thinking, I'm seeing myself. I'm seeing myself in all these ugly ways too. I'm
Mhm.
seeing how I have these shortcomings, and I'm seeing how I'm not this Sound of Music mom. I'm
Mhm.
seeing, so I had to like lose this idea of who I was
Mhm.
going to be and
Mhm.
face the reality. I am not at all close to the
Mhm.
mother I want to be. And
Yeah.
I became obsessed with making sure my children didn't suffer,
Mhm.
didn't suffer in terms of weren't going to be a statistic
Mhm.
instead of being free to mother.
Mhm.
That's what I mean, that Black women are saddled with this burden right at the get-go. Don't let your child be a statistics. Your child, here are the stats about graduation rates. Here are this crime. Da, 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 da. So our job is a national project rather than just being, I want to be in relationship with this human being and just see what happens. And I lost that. I
Mhm.
lost that completely with my children. And by
Mhm.
the time I realized that I was subscribing to this national or whatever project and not really being and mothering and
Mhm.
this, it was like my kids were teens.
Mhm. Which is also not fault of yours, complete fault, right? It's like, yes, you take accountability, but in the same breath, it's the reality that you live and the
Yeah.
outcomes that you'll have to face. And so, what do you do? It's a lot of pressure for one person, two people, even, but one person in the sense of you can relate. You are a Black woman with Black children, right? Putting it
Yeah.
out there, your partner was of a different
Yeah.
background,
Yeah.
right? Just to give context. So, it's not all on you. Like I am no one to say that, but I'm just saying that
Yeah.
to tell you that it's hard. And I feel like I've mentioned to you too, I've said, I really want to be a mom because of not having my mom, but understanding the beauty of having a family. I have different experiences. But in relation of that sense of belonging, wanting that family. But then as I healed, I start to see so much more to life than a family. I'm not saying a family is not great and not a great additive and being a wife. I'm a fiance and it's a beautiful thing. And I'm thankful for companionship. I'm thankful for my partner who's a soft landing. I'm not taking that away. But at
Yeah.
one point, that was my focal point: belong, have a family. But then I realized I love traveling. I love playing soccer. I love my girlfriends. I love just laughing, right? Like we've
Yeah.
joked and laughed, and I get so much joy in that too. It doesn't all have to revolve
Yeah.
around just being a mom and just wanting to be a wife. Like, why?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say to you that you took on the responsibility of saying you're doing this project,
Mm.
but it's also your reality and what you were faced with and all the things that came with your journey of becoming a mom. Like yours, like we're talking about in a snippet in 1 hour of time. Like this is your life that you lived over years as you grew, as you were in a new country, as you took on your mom, as you're still thinking about your mom, as you're creating your own family.
Yeah.
Like you're surviving, smiling. Like, are you okay? We're still like, oh my, like you're a hero. Like to me, you're a hero. Like, what? Mentally? Like, imagine people get a pimple and don't want to go to school this day and age, right? They're feeling embarrassed. Their friends will make fun of
Yeah.
them. Imagine, like, it's insane. Um, so your mothering journey, picking up a lot of stress and heartache and all the things to be a mom. And so, what was your mothering journey like? Like, aside from, yes, working on the national project because you felt like there was a lot that you had to endure and
Mm.
instill in your children, were there ever moments where you reflected to say, this is what my experience with my mom was like. I want to try something different. Or when you came to moments of reflection to say, like, what was that like? What was mothering like over the years? In the
Well,
pot, in the things that brought you joy and peace.
mm, I would say that I definitely was like, I'm not going to be like my mom. I'm
Hmm.
not going to be angry all the time, and I'm not going to hit my children. I'm not going to beat them, and then the full reality of mother hits you, uh, where you are overwhelmed quite a lot, and you don't always have space for it. But one good decision that I made, and you have to understand, when I met my husband, our very first date, I said to him, I'm not going to marry a man who's not a Christian. I also want to adopt children, and I want to be a stay-at-home mom. If any of those three things do not align with your life, your values, what you want, let's just go our separate ways now. Like I at least had that agency to know, like, these are my non-negotiables. I will not whatever with. So that was agreed to on the very first date.
Hmm.
And so one thing that I did do, and I did with my whole entire self, was to be a stay-at-home mom. It was something I look back on, and I did it for a while. It was something I look back on. There's another side to it, but I'm going to just deal with this side right now, with absolute pride, joy, and pleasure.
Hmm.
I stayed up late baking bread because I wanted my kids
Hmm.
to have bread that I made.
Hmm.
I designed activities for my kids every day. I designed them.
Hmm.
I had a routine set up. I invited people along. I had a public calendar that I put what I was doing every day, and people could sign up for the calendar and join me in these things. I was in a group of friends where we were all stay-at-home moms, and it was a large group, and we did things together with our kids, and it was all about mothering. It was all about our children. I Before my kids went to preschool, they went to preschool with me.
Hmm.
And we did these little things every I'm smiling because that time in my life was filled with so much pain,
Hmm.
because my husband was struggling
Hmm.
in a significant way.
Hmm.
And my way of shielding my children from that was to create a whole other world. And
Hmm.
I went full force into that world, and I made it something that I am proud of.
Hmm.
That I was able to offer them my time, my presence, my undivided attention. My youngest daughter, my mom said, like, I think one of the reasons why I have some problems with my hips is I carried my children for a long time. I nursed for a long time because I wanted to. It's not because anybody was out there. I was not part of no group telling me da da da, no trad wife movement. Sorry to people who are, but I'm sorry. That is not at all what I was. I was just a person who loved the domestic life, and I was living it full force, and I took part in every little nugget of it because it's what I wanted.
Hmm.
That is the one time in my life I actually had agency, and I took it and I fought for it and I protected it.
Hmm.
Even to this day, the way I work, the way I've always worked, has been, I want to be there before school as much as possible. I want to be there after school. All you all, TDSB, York University, All you all can't say nothing about that, and don't come test me about that, because that, you can't touch it. You
Mhm,
cannot touch it. That is the one thing I do not regret, is
mhm,
everything I had to do to protect that time with my children.
mhm,
And I'm not saying everybody needs to do it. I'm just saying that's what I wanted.
mhm.
And I went into it. So I went off on a tangent there,
Okay.
but I don't know if you want to redirect me.
It's okay. You hold firm in that, Rachel. I want you to feel like you
Yeah.
have a say. Um, yes, I want to redirect you to go into the grief you felt when you lost your husband and now you're a mom on your own. What did that bring up? What was that like? Yes, obviously the obvious, yes, painful, hurtful, all the things, but what did that really do to your being, to the lives of your children? How did you channel that energy? Um, and how did you deal with grief now again? What is that like now? You're not a child anymore dealing with grief. You're an adult. So this is a lot. This is heavy loaded. I'm asking about
Yeah.
your kids and grief. I'm
Yeah.
asking about single parenthood. I'm asking about grief itself.
Yeah.
Whichever one you so choose, please share.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back a little bit before my husband passed so people understand. My mom and I were talking yesterday, and my mom said to me, and I may get emotional here,
It's
she
okay.
said to me, I did not think I was going to be emotional. She said to me, "You haven't been happy. You
Mm,
haven't, you haven't." She goes, during COVID, you were dancing, you were doing things with friends, you were
mm,
out and about.
mm,
And she's like, "I've watched you the past 2 years,
mm,
just like, just not, you don't laugh with your whole face."
mm,
And she's like, "I look at you and I just want you to be yourself again."
mm,
And I think, and I know what stole that from me,
mm,
right? It's
mm,
the stress my kids started going through
mm,
a lot.
mm,
My son, there was a lot that
mm,
was going, and it was
mm,
remnants of what happened with my husband.
mm,
And also part of it was being a PhD candidate, being a graduate student, constantly being evaluated,
mm,
whether it's formally or informally,
mm,
what you're thinking, how that's constantly like being like cut into all the time.
mm,
It it wears you down.
mm,
You lose your joy,
mm,
because you're like, my work, my dissertation is not, it's not an essay. It's
mm,
my life. It's my
mm,
great grandmother's life.
mm,
It's the legacy that was left for me to complete
mm,
and to carry on.
mm,
So every time I have to go into a situation where I'm like, here you go, and then it comes back with, oh, da 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 da, and it's very insensitive the way it's done and handled in academia,
mm,
right? We have standards.
mm.
Here's what you have to rise to the standard.
We have policies that are political and for who I'm not sure, but
I was gonna swear, but I won't.
yeah,
But I'm like, you
don't
know
worry,
what?
it'll be blurbed out.
You know that song? I don't. I'm going to you. Like, I'm like, I'm sorry. When my mom said to me, "Where are you? Like,
Mm,
where is this?" And I realized I had lost.
mm,
I lost the joy and the livingness that I had cultivated and created.
mm,
So when I'm gonna, this will make sense in a second. So when before my husband passed, I had to purposely cultivate joy because there was so much harm that was happening to me, emotional abuse, sometimes physical.
mm,
You know, my husband was like recording my phone conversations. He was blocking me from leaving the house.
mm,
I remember once I was pulling into my driveway full of groceries. All four kids, remember, they're like babies. The
mm,
oldest one I think is like, I don't know, four or whatever, five maybe. No, I think five. And I pulling in with my mom in the car in the minivan with the groceries, ready to upload it, and I get a call, and it's CAS, and they're like, "You can't. Where are you?" And I told them, and they're like, "You can't go in your house.
mm,
You can't allow the father of your children to know where you are. You have to go to a place right now. I don't have family here outside of my mom. My mom lives with me,
Mm,
and I had to leave my home.
mm,
I had to drive off the driveway. We had nowhere to go. You know where? We went to McDonald's and tried to figure out where am I going to go with my kids. I can't return home with the kids, and I can't let him know where the kids are.
mm,
And for that whole summer, we lived at friends in one bedroom. My daughter had to sleep in a bathroom because she needed like her own space in the crib. I slept on like a roll out couch with all my kids. Then my mom took us here for a week, and then I went with my other friend's house. I want people to understand this is part of the story too.
mm, mm,
That as a mom, I also had to deal with this homelessness, with this. I wasn't working because I was a stay at home mom. I didn't have money saved up for myself. So,
which is important. I just want to add that in, folks. It's
yeah,
always important to have a little bit of money on the side if you can, to not completely rely on others. Yes.
yeah. But
Really
it's also
important.
important to be supported because
Mm-hmm,
it's not only just the money. It's, I had these 4 kids, and my son was starting kindergarten, and all of this is going on
mm-hmm,
while we're homeless, pretty much.
mm-hmm,
And it took a little more than 2 months for us to be able to return home.
mm-hmm,
But there was a lot of situations like in that way. So when my husband was going having a lot of severe mental health issues, um, we were all dragged into that kind of situation. Um, so I remember the day that he died being the worst time for me and my children because I had to come home and tell my children that they no longer have a father.
mm-hmm,
And that was, we were estranged by that time. So because he couldn't live with us because of situation that happened, but it was, they were still seeing him.
mm-hmm,
And that was devastating for my children. I
mm-hmm,
mean, I think you are probably one of the few people who can understand from a child's perspective what that's like to have your whole world change in a
mm-hmm,
day, in a moment.
mm-hmm,
I remember, coming into the room and having to deliver this news to 4 little children.
mm-hmm,
We There was 4 adults in the room, and we each held one child
mm-hmm,
as I told them.
mm-hmm,
It was horrible.
mm-hmm,
It's devastating for those children.
mm-hmm,
And so what I did was I decided, I don't want my children to suffer. So I decided I'm going to do all the things
mm-hmm,
that they need, that they want, that they da da da. And I'm going to focus on making sure they're not suffering.
mm-hmm,
But what I didn't realize is that that created its own kind of suffering for them.
mm-hmm,
And so, and then I didn't grieve,
mm-hmm,
right? And I didn't, so we were all in this grieflessness state, and it was creating a lot of toxic situations in the family
mm-hmm,
where I was a very easy to light fuse.
mm-hmm,
I was very tender, very raw, and so desperate and anxious to make everything right for my kids, which meant I kept messing it up. And then when I'm messing it up, I'm beating myself down, beating them down. I'm like not physically, but like it just created a very unhealthy environment. So
mm-hmm,
that unresolved grief, when something like that happens, the social worker tries to arrange support for the family, from the hospital. The hospital provides that to the family. And my children were supposed to be in a rainbows sort of group. And when I approached the person who was organized, they didn't have it in their school. She said, as long as you're talking to them, that's okay. As long as they're coming to you and talking to you. We had a book, we have a table that they put objects on, even to this day, for him. But I'm sorry, that wasn't enough for my kids.
mm-hmm,
It wasn't enough. They really did need like intervention, and I needed it. And I
mm-hmm,
couldn't tend to my grief and their grief at the same time. So mine was put on hold. And theirs was too for them.
mm-hmm,
They didn't all deal with the grief at the same time.
mm-hmm. Which is hard and challenging because how do you give to people who need so much of you when you don't have much to give because you have stuff to work on within? But that's usually what moms do. They just keep it moving and carry so much. Do you feel that you are still grieving?
I think anybody who's lost, and even though my husband and I were estranged, that complicates the grief because he
Mhm.
didn't live with us the last 2 years.
Mm,
But I feel like he'll come to me. Like he'll come to me. I'll be on the highway or I'll be in my office. I'll be, sometimes I'll be with my kids and I'll just see what their life could have been if they had a dad.
Mm,
I grieve for my children a lot
mm,
because there was a time where they were like, I want that. I
mm,
want that. They
mm,
were really longing for that father-child relationship. Um, as I said, my relationship with my husband it's complicated because for all the reasons I stated in the story. And so the grief, sometimes when I pass by where he moved to, where he lived, where he died, I'm just held captive in
mm,
that, thinking about his suffering.
mm,
But that's the part that hurts the most,
mm,
is knowing someone like him suffered. Like when that used to just grip me.
mm,
Like he did not, nobody deserves to suffer, but he did not deserve to suffer.
mm.
And he did not deserve to live life in agony. And he did.
What would you say? What would you say to a young person that has lost a parent? What would you say to them? What would be your advice to them?
Like, what,
What's your advice? Forget about even other children,
yeah,
right? What's your advice to your children when they come of age? Obviously, they're aware now,
yeah.
but as they come into like 25, 28, what will be your advice to them or your wisdom? No advice. What would you want them to settle with in their spirit to find some sort of contentment, let's say, or bring peace to the situation?
I don't think it's about being in any certain state. I think it's about being in awareness. Maybe that's a
Mm,
state too, but being in awareness that you're on a journey and
mm,
that journey is going to unfold in its own way,
mm,
in its own time, in
mm,
its own design.
mm,
And no one can tell you how to deal with that grief, but it's good to be in touch with your body. So, as a person who does a lot of embodied work, I let my body communicate to me. So, if I'm feeling, sometimes when would be driving home, because it's the time I'm alone a lot from work, that's when the memory of things would come to me with him and the thought of how he suffered, and it would grip me, and I would just not know what to do.
mm,
And what I've learned to do is, because there's a lot of guilt, right? There's a lot of guilt that when I was at the hospital and he passed, and I found out he passed, the first words out of my mouth was, I left him alone.
mm,
I knew he wouldn't make it if I left him alone, and I left him alone.
mm,
And it's forgiving yourself for the parts that you don't yet understand.
mm,
It's knowing that there are parts I am not, like, everything is going to unfold in its own way and own time, but to be in touch with your body, because your body tells you what you need. Your body tells you, I
mm,
need touch, I need space, something's heavy, I'm anxious, I'm restless. Those are all your body speaking to you, telling you, or I'm numb.
mm. That's huge. I'm even thinking though on the beauty
Mhm,
and blessing that sometimes can feel like a double-edged sword to be conscious, right?
mhm,
Because everything we're saying, it's really, some say it's so deep. I
mhm,
say it's human. I say it's reflection, it's awareness. But I'm even thinking how you came to be reflective of your life and go back and think about your childhood and understand your mom and think about what you were doing to your children and think about the grief you carried on yourself. It's like people shut it out. They shut thoughts out. They drink, they smoke, they go to the gym 4 times a day, they go party, they do all these things to not go there
yeah,
ever. And sometimes it comes at the end of the road or through their kids or through death, usually. You start reflecting. But how, like, what has, like, have you ever thought about that? Like, I
oh yeah.
reflect a lot, or what does that mean, or why, or like, any
I
thoughts
wasn't
to that?
I wasn't so when everything was unrolling and I was like single parenting completely, and my husband had passed and all this had happened, I wasn't really tending to myself at all. Like, well, I wasn't at all,
Mm-hmm.
actually. I was forced to because I was started working at TDS being a central role, and I was facing a lot of like racial violence
Mm-hmm.
there. And I remember standing in the kitchen one day washing dishes, and I couldn't move. I was
Mm-hmm.
in so much pain in my chest that I felt I could not move. I couldn't continue to wash dishes. I couldn't even sit down. I was just like I could not move, and my mom looked at me and realized something's not right. And I was rushed to emergency,
Mm-hmm.
and the emergency doctor basically told me, he's like, you need to stop everything that you're doing. Just everything needs to come to a halt. You cannot go to work. And I said, no, I have to go tomorrow because I've got, he's like, no, you cannot do anything. You need to stop. Because I can tell you this is stress related.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to go on leave. And when I was on leave, I had a naturopath as well that I started to see. And the naturopath told me every day for 20 minutes, I want you to do something for joy
Mm-hmm.
every day. During that time, I was really heavy. So you asked about how did I cope? I was really heavy into my workout. Like I was running marathons. I was like, I think I was like deadlifting like 280, something like crazy numbers. Like I was like full on workout queen, body, like whatever. And that was where I poured all my grief into,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it took a toll on my body. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I started, and the naturopath always said to me, you can't tend to anybody's problems except for your kids. So you can't listen to friends about their problems. You can't listen to neighbors, nobody, your mom, no one. You can only focus on you and your kids. And and he also made me take a nap every day for 10 minutes.
Beautiful. 10 minutes is too short. We need 1 hour, but here.
Right, right. So what happened with that 20 minutes of joy is I didn't know what to do. It's like, it can't be running, it can't be working out, it can't be cooking, it can't be anything that requires labor. I didn't know what to do. So I hadn't touched my art tools since high school. So I took out this set that I bought for my son, and I just started doodling and painting for 20 minutes every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to paint little nuggets of truth that were coming to me through this time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I started doing that, I started to write it down. I started to create images.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, that's where my healing came. I started to connect with my ancestral knowledge, with my ability as a storyteller, with my artistic abilities, and that helped me to really be able to heal from the inside, like really going deep into myself through art to find the words to express what I was learning about myself, but also what I needed from this world.
Tell us about your book. Like,
Okay.
I know that's important to you. It's like we jumped from all these things, and I feel like we could still talk for hours. But I want to respect your time, my time. And so I do want to end with that is something that brings you joy, your book, and you've worked a
Yeah.
long time on it. And there's a lot of stories that kind of are of your past and your history and character form, etc. But I would love for you to share with us another form of your art is your writing and your book. And so tell us about your book, the name, where it stemmed from, what it talks to, how you can relate your book to your livelihood and where you are now.
So it's based on mothering. So my book, We've Been Here Before, is a intergenerational novel. So I started to explore my relationship with my mom because I was now a mother, and I was seeing all these things, and I'm like, what were the conditions that set the stage for me to mother in this way? And so I looked to my mom, and I was like, what were the conditions that were set for her to mother the way that she mothered me? And then I looked to her mom, and so on and so on. And in all of these generations, I found stories. I found these are the ways that Black women in the Caribbean have had to confront the issue of care, have had to confront the issue of labor, how labor impacts our mothering, how care impacts our mothering, whether how we have to extend care and how we receive care or not receive care, and also how migration, because I it's loosely based on my life, so I follow like sometimes we have to make these hard choices to leave home,
Mhm.
And in Dominica in particular, my grandmother had to leave to go and work at 15 years old in an estate that my grandfather was a son of the owner of the estate. And that was a plantation. It was a slave plantation. But then during post enslavement, he still worked, he still owned it. And at 15 years old, my grandfather raped my grandmother,
Mhm.
and she returned home, and that's how my mother's born.
Mhm.
And that's where I started with the stories, because that for me was like, I saw how that experience for my grandmother totally impact her mothering.
Mhm.
And so I explore all these themes in the book, and I explore how voice reclamation is a form of healing. So I got voice reclamation, as I shared with you, through my art, through painting. That
Mhm.
was my voice,
Mhm.
right? Through storytelling, all these things. Some people get that from singing. Some people get that from living their life in a certain way.
Mhm.
And that's what this book is about. It's about all these conditions that are created to set Afro Caribbean women up to mother and be mothered in these ways.
Beautiful. And where can we find your book? Where can people inquire and
Everywhere.
see everywhere? Give me examples of platforms.
I don't really like to promote Amazon, but if you can order it from a Canadian local bookstore, and if they don't have it at the bookstore, you can ask them to have it, and
Mhm.
they will get it for you, like a different book list. Another story will probably, you can ask them, can you carry this book? That would be fantastic.
Mhm.
If you pre-order the book on Amazon or Chapters or any of these places, and this is not just true to me, but please, if you know any other Black authors out there,
Mhm.
pre-order their books, because
Mhm.
when you pre-order their books, then that whoever it is that's selling their book places that book on a higher priority when it gets out. So
Beautiful.
pre-orders are super important. So you can go on Amazon for now, although I don't support like Amazon generally, but you can go on Amazon, Chapters or Indigo, whatever it's called now. You can even go to the publisher's website, Dundurn Press, who is a Canadian company. They
Mhm.
have a link there where you can choose to be sent an email when the book comes out. The book comes out May 12th, 2026.
Mhm.
And I will be holding a series of book talks both here in Canada and in Dominica. I'm actually going to be holding one in December in Dominica. And so look out for those to engage. Because for me, the book is not just about me putting this product together. I want to engage Afro Caribbean women, people who get often ignored, in conversations about womanhood and motherhood and voice reclamation. And so that's what this book is a sort of a vehicle for. So it's bigger than the book. It's more, the book is just helping us to get this conversation going.
Beautiful. And where can people find you, see your work, say great job, anything? Where can they
Or
find
give
you?
me an Instagram account, Afro Quill. But if you Google my name, if you just Google my name, you'll see my website is my whole name, Myrtle Henry Sodhi. You can just Google my name and you'll see all the places that I will come up, which is my website, Instagram, LinkedIn. Yeah, so pull up on me. Let's go.
Wow, not pull up on me. Love this new age mom. Pull up on me. She has young children. I
Yeah.
love that for you.
Yeah.
Well, Myrtle, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I obviously am just so grateful. I'm grateful that I'm being used as a tool to have this opportunity to get this out there. And I'm thankful for your wisdom. And I'm thankful that you have not given up the fight. Because even
Mhm.
just here now, I feel like I'm going to go lay down and just cry a little, just
Oh
like,
my God.
wow, it's heavy. It's a lot, right? And you still make space for others. I will say that. I want to highlight that in your pain, however it comes out, you have made space for others. You have made space for me. You have helped me through some of my hardest challenges where in retrospect to yours, it's like, get over yourself. It's fine. Like some will like you, some will not. You keep moving.
Yeah.
But thank you for carrying me through, for massaging my scalp with oil. Like, does that mean we're mother and daughter? Because I don't know who does that. I've also
Yes.
helped with your children in your
Yes.
bed.
Yes.
So you have really, I don't think you open up to a lot of people, but you definitely gave me a bit of yourself, which I always need healing. I'm always feeling needing a mom is necessary. But yeah, just wanting to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm always wishing you abundance, the best. You're the best, and your kids are blessed to have you.
It's frozen.